analysis of modern cult organizations, focusing on Scientology and World Mission Society, Church of God. Hello, dear listeners. The story I wish to share with you today is not merely a critique of a few religious organizations. This is an in-depth analysis of the most cunning and dangerous systems of spiritual exploitation that permeate our times. People living in the 21st century experience profound spiritual emptiness despite material abundance. Economic instability, social isolation, and desperate longing for meaning in life have settled deep within all our hearts. It is precisely at this vulnerable point that malicious groups target our most pure desires. The Scientology and World Mission Society Church of God, WMSCOG, that we will examine today may appear completely different on the surface. One is a self-proclaimed scientific religion that originated in America, while the other is a Christian-affiliated new religious movement that emerged in Korea. However, when we analyze their operational mechanisms, we discover remarkably similar patterns. Both systematically exploit humanity's most fundamental needs, the longing for belonging, meaning, and salvation. They wrap themselves in authoritative exteriors of science or the Bible, claiming to offer perfect solutions to desperate modern people. But their true nature is nothing more than elaborately designed exploitation systems. In France, Scientology has been convicted of fraud charges, and in Germany, it is classified as a commercial pseudo-organization under surveillance. WMSCOG is also embroiled in controversies over family destruction and financial exploitation worldwide. Yet despite this, they continue to operate actively, producing new victims. Here, let me add a somewhat cynical perspective. Despite these obvious warning signals sounding everywhere, why do countless people still fall into these traps? It is because our society fails to provide genuine spiritual refuge and communal bonds. In a modern society dominated by individualism and materialism, these groups offer what appears to be an oasis but is actually a mirage. Through this audiobook, you will dissect the cunning manipulation techniques of these groups, piece by piece. Furthermore, we will deeply explore how to protect yourself and your loved ones from these spiritual parasites, and what constitutes genuine spiritual growth. Chapter 1. The Absolutization of Authority. The dangerous game of humans who became gods. At the heart of every manipulative group sits a figure wielding absolute authority. L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology and Yang Gilja of WMSCOG each deified themselves in different ways, but their purpose and results are identical: to fundamentally block the critical thinking of their members. L. Ron Hubbard packaged himself as the scientist who discovered the only solution to save humanity. He concealed his past as a science fiction writer and built his authority through the scientific discovery of Dianetics. In Scientology, Hubbard's words are scientific truth, and his writings are presented as the most important discoveries in human history. Meanwhile, Yang Gilja more directly calls herself God the Mother and is revered as a divine being. In WMSCOG, she is not human, but a divine entity interpreted as the Jerusalem of the Old Testament and the bride of the New Testament. When this happens, all her words and actions become God's will, and any criticism or doubt becomes blasphemy. The first effect created by such absolute authority structures is the unidirectional flow of information. In healthy organizations, feedback flows actively from bottom to top, but in these groups, only the leader's teachings flow downward. Members' opinions or suggestions are unimportant, and raising questions is interpreted as evidence of insufficient faith. The second effect is the structuralization of responsibility avoidance. All good things become the leader's accomplishments, while all bad things are attributed to members' lack of faith or external interference. In Scientology, if there are no therapeutic effects, it's because you didn't follow properly. And in WMSCOG, if blessings don't come, it's because of insufficient faith. The third effect is the systematic suppression of critical thinking. They define questioning itself as evil. Scientology explains critical thinking as the work of the reactive mind, while WMSCOG calls it Satan's deception. This causes members to lose their ability to think independently and depend solely on the organization's interpretation. Here, let me add a somewhat cynical perspective. Such authoritarian structures are found in various areas of modern society. The personality cults of political leaders, charismatic CEO cultures in corporations, and even authoritarian operations in some academic institutions. Power is inherently corruptible, and unchecked power inevitably corrupts. True authority presupposes transparency, accountability, and the possibility of oversight. If any individual or organization demands absolute obedience while not disclosing their decision-making process, not taking responsibility for mistakes, and blocking external criticism, that is not healthy authority, but despotic power. The key criterion for judging the legitimacy of authority is whether it is serving authority or dominating power. True leaders serve their members and promote their growth, while manipulative leaders use members as tools for their own purposes. Please evaluate all authority figures you encounter by this standard. Chapter 2. The Mechanism of Information Manipulation. A sophisticated system distorting truth. Information is the source of power. People's judgments and actions are determined by who possesses what information, how it is interpreted, and how it is transmitted. Both Scientology and WMSCOG have accurately grasped this point and built sophisticated information control systems. Scientology's information manipulation is characterized by wearing the guise of science. They claim Dianetics is the science of the mind, while employing complex terminology, charts, and measuring devices to create scientific authority. They claim to measure mental states with a device called an e-meter, but it is actually nothing more than a simple electrical resistance meter. However, this appearance exerts powerful persuasive force on modern people who trust science. WMSCOG exploits the religious authority of the Bible. They claim to support their doctrines by selectively quoting specific Bible passages. However, most of these quotations are arbitrary interpretations that ignore the original context. For example, connecting the Jerusalem above in Galatians 4:26 to Jangilja individually is a clear distortion of Scripture. Both groups use the strategy of monopolizing interpretation rights. Scientology prohibits ordinary people from interpreting Dianetics themselves, claiming only organization-approved interpretations are correct. WMSCOG also prohibits ordinary believers from interpreting the Bible, absolutizing only Mother's interpretation. The most dangerous element in their information manipulation is gradual information disclosure. Initially, they provide relatively reasonable and acceptable information, but over time they reveal increasingly extreme and unrealistic content. Scientology's OT levels and WMSCOG's deep truths are all products of such gradual disclosure. Blocking external information is also an important strategy. Scientology defines critical media reports or testimonies from former members as hostile propaganda and prohibits contact. WMSCOG calls existing Christianity Babylon and forbids listening to views from other churches or theologians. Here, let me add a somewhat cynical perspective. These information manipulation techniques are routinely used in various areas of modern society. Selective fact disclosure by politicians, corporate marketing strategies, biased media reporting. We are exposed to countless information manipulations daily, and the ability to discern them has become an essential survival skill for modern people. The key to detecting information manipulation is securing diverse perspectives. When encountering any important information or claims, You must always seek interpretations and rebuttals from other viewpoints. Particularly suspect any attempts to claim absolute truth, prohibit other interpretations, or block external information. You must also always verify the source and context of information. Who is providing this information? What are their motives? What did this information mean in its original context? Through these questions, we can escape the traps of manipulated information. Chapter 3. The Structure of Economic Exploitation. Merchants Selling Salvation. You can know an organization's true purpose by looking at the flow of money. Analyzing the economic structures of Scientology and WMSCOG reveals that these are not religious organizations, but elaborately constructed financial exploitation systems. Scientology's economic exploitation appears as commercialization of spiritual products. They have packaged spiritual growth like university courses. There are beginner, intermediate, and advanced courses, each with clear price tags. Reaching the highest level, OT8, reportedly requires paying hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even more cunning is payment pressure through emotional manipulation. After identifying members' deepest traumas and anxieties during Dianetics counseling sessions, they pressure that advanced courses are absolutely necessary to resolve these issues. This creates the same effect as a doctor telling a patient, "You will die if you don't receive this treatment." WMSCOG's economic exploitation takes the form of economizing religious obligations. Tithing is basic, with constant demands for various special offerings, missionary funds, building funds, etc. Furthermore, they pressure members to dedicate real estate, vehicles, and even bank accounts to the organization. All of this is justified under the name of offering to God. Both groups are characterized by complete opacity in financial operations. Ordinary members cannot know at all how the money they contributed is used. There are no financial reports, no audits, and members cannot even ask questions. Scientology conceals fund flows through complex corporate structures, while WMSCOG makes it difficult to determine actual asset size by distributing real estate ownership under multiple names. The most malicious aspect is the economic dependency strategy. The organization makes members dedicate all their assets to the organization, then makes them depend only on jobs provided by the organization. This puts members in a situation where they cannot survive economically, even if they want to leave the organization. This is no different from modern serfdom. Here, let me add a somewhat cynical perspective. In modern capitalist society, even salvation can be commodified, as these groups blatantly demonstrate. Such economic exploitation in the name of religion is not merely a problem of individual organizations, but a monstrous phenomenon, born of market fundamentalism. The key to detecting economic exploitation is confirming transparency. For all organizations you pay or donate to, ask these questions. How exactly is this money used? Is there transparent reporting of financial operations? Can members monitor and check financial operations? True religions or spiritual communities do not fear economic transparency. Rather, they actively disclose to prove their integrity. In contrast, exploitative organizations always try to hide their finances and condemn those who ask questions as lacking faith. Chapter 4. Social Isolation Strategy. Cunning techniques to cut off from the world. Humans are social animals. Our identity, values, and even perception of reality are formed through social relationships. Manipulative groups accurately grasp this point and systematically isolate members from existing society. This is like destroying the immune system to infect with a virus. Scientology's isolation strategy centers on the concept of suppressive person, SP. They classify all people who criticize or question the organization as SPs and force believers to cut relationships with them. This includes family, friends, and colleagues. Even if parents or spouses are classified as SPS, all contact must be completely severed. WMSCOG uses more religious packaging. With logic like, do not associate with unbelievers, and worldly people all belong to Satan, they destroy existing human relationships, particularly defining existing Christians as children of Babylon. They teach limiting relationships with family members who attend other churches. The most serious damage in this isolation process is family breakdown. Both groups justify severing family ties with the logic that faith comes before blood relations. Countless families have been destroyed because of this, with parents and children, spouses permanently separated. This is an anti-human act that destroys humanity's most basic social bonds. When existing relationships weaken, the organization immediately provides new relationship networks. Scientology creates strong belonging through common identities as clear and OT, while WMSCOG uses the special status of God's children. However, these relationships are not genuine friendship or love, but conditional relationships. The characteristic of relationships within the organization is mutual surveillance and reporting. Members monitor each other and immediately report to superiors anyone expressing dissatisfaction or doubt about the organization. This is characteristic of a surveillance society, not a genuine community. People cannot confide their true feelings and must always act cautiously. Control of time and space is also an important means of isolation. Both groups try to completely control members' schedules. Frequent meetings, long worship services, evangelistic activities minimize personal time. This leaves no room to invest in activities or relationships outside the organization. Here, let me add a somewhat cynical perspective. Such social isolation is found in various organizations in modern society. Some corporations company as family culture. Political groups demands for exclusive unity. Even some hobby groups excessive time demands. Attempts to completely subordinate individuals to organizations exist everywhere. The key to preventing social isolation is maintaining diverse relationships. Don't depend on just one organization or group. Maintain relationships with people of various backgrounds and perspectives. Through multiple layers of human relationships, family, friends, colleagues, hobby groups, you can maintain a balanced perspective. Healthy organizations respect and encourage members' diverse relationships. They actually hope members become richer persons through activities outside the organization. In contrast, manipulative organizations always demand exclusive relationships and are jealous of and obstruct other relationships. Chapter 5: The Science of Psychological Manipulation. Sophisticated techniques to control the mind. The human mind is surprisingly complex yet vulnerable. We all experience emotions like anxiety, loneliness, and helplessness, and we want to escape from these feelings. Scientology and WMSCOG precisely identify and systematically exploit these psychological weaknesses of humans. The first technique commonly used by both groups is fear marketing. Scientology creates anxiety about people's mental state through the concept of the reactive mind. They claim, there are hidden traumas in your mind that are destroying you, and threaten that without resolving these, you will suffer for life. WMSCOG uses more direct eschatological fear. They endlessly repeat messages like, the day of judgment is imminent. You go to hell if you don't keep the Sabbath. You cannot be saved without keeping the Passover. Such fear paralyzes people's rational judgment and makes them cling to solutions offered by the organization. The second technique is love bombing. They shower new members with excessive attention and affection. Everyone treats them kindly and makes them feel special. For people who felt alienated in daily life, this feels like experiencing heaven. However, this love is thoroughly conditional. It continues only as long as they remain loyal and obedient to the organization. If they raise questions or rebel, the love is immediately withdrawn and replaced by coldness and condemnation. This extreme change makes members even more dependent on the organization. The third technique is intentional induction of cognitive dissonance. The organization intentionally presents contradictory information or demands. Scientology presents the contradictory concept of scientific religion, while WMSCOG presents the contradiction that a loving God sends disobedient people to hell. Such contradictions intensify members' mental confusion and diminish their ability to think independently. The fourth technique is gradual commitment. They don't make excessive demands from the beginning, but start small and gradually increase requirements. Initially requiring simple meeting attendance, they gradually demand time investment, financial contributions, and personal sacrifices. This gradual approach prevents members from recognizing how deeply they are falling into the trap. The fifth is identity reconstruction. They dismantle existing self-identity and replace it with new identity provided by the organization. In Scientology, you become clear or OT, and in WMSCOG, you become God's child. This new identity has powerful addictive properties and makes leaving the organization feel like identity loss. Here, let me add a somewhat cynical perspective. These psychological manipulation techniques are widely used in marketing, politics, and even human relationships in modern society. We are exposed to countless psychological manipulations daily, and anyone can become a victim of manipulation if they don't recognize this. The key to detecting psychological manipulation is separating emotion from logic. When making important decisions, don't immediately react to emotional impulses, but analyze logically with time. Be especially cautious in situations that create fear or urgency while demanding immediate decisions. Chapter 6. Exploiting legal blind spots. The shield of religious freedom. Law and institutions are not perfect. No matter how meticulously crafted, laws have unforeseen loopholes, and malicious groups cleverly exploit precisely these blind spots. One reason Scientology and WMSCOG can continue their activities for so long is the existence of such legal gaps. The biggest blind spot is the constitutional right of religious freedom. In modern democratic societies, religious freedom is recognized as a very important fundamental right. This is certainly a precious value that must be protected. However, the problem is that such religious freedom can be abused as a shield protecting illegal and antisocial acts performed under the guise of religious activity. Scientology received approval from the U.S. Internal Revenue Service, IRS, in 1993 as a tax-exempt religious organization. However, suspicions have been raised about thousands of lawsuits and pressures during this process. Once they gained religious status, all their activities became protected as religious activities. Excessive donation demands could be packaged as expressions of faith, and severing family ties as religious beliefs. WMSCOG is also registered as a religious corporation in various countries, receiving legal protection. Their extreme doctrines and exclusive behaviors are also protected within the scope of religious freedom. Condemning other religions as Satan's churches and demanding excessive donations from believers are all considered freedom of religious expression. The second blind spot is the principle of individual voluntary choice. Modern law maximally respects free choices of individual adults. Even if choices appear objectively unreasonable, there is no intervention unless there is clear coercion or fraud. However, the problem is difficulty in determining whether consent obtained through psychological manipulation or information distortion constitutes genuine voluntary choice. People joining both groups mostly formally join voluntarily, there is no physical coercion. But as we've seen, can decisions made in states where judgment is clouded through sophisticated psychological manipulation and information distortion truly be called genuine voluntary choices? The third blind spot is its separation of corporate personality and individuals. Both groups are registered as religious corporations and are legally separate entities from individual leaders. This enables responsibility dispersion and avoidance. When problems occur in the organization, they can claim that was an individual believer's act, and when individuals are questioned, they can say that was the organization's decision. The fourth is the complexity of financial operations. They establish multiple corporations and create complex ownership structures, making it difficult to track actual fund flows. Religious corporations generally receive tax benefits, but often public benefit verification is not properly conducted. Here, let me add a somewhat cynical perspective. These legal blind spots are not problems only of these groups. Many organizations in modern society exploit legal loopholes, corporate tax avoidance, illegal political funds of political groups, legal shield construction by various fraudulent organizations. Law always lags behind reality. In this situation, the best response individuals can make is recognizing the limits of legal protection. Law doesn't protect everything, especially for new forms of crime or manipulation. Legal response is inevitably slow. Therefore, developing individual capacity for self-protection is most important. The surveillance and oversight role of civil society is also important. Investigative reporting by media, monitoring by civic organizations, and courageous testimonies by victims can supplement the limitations of law. Chapter 7. Victims' Reality and Recovery. The Long Journey of Wounded Souls. The suffering experienced by victims of manipulative groups is much deeper and more complex than ordinary people imagine. These people experience widespread mental damage beyond simple shame of being deceived. Identity confusion, reality perception distortion, fundamental distrust of human relationships. The first problem, commonly experienced by people who left Scientology or WMS-COG, is maximization of cognitive dissonance. When things believed as absolute truth for years, sometimes decades, are suddenly proven false, the ability to distinguish what is true and what is false becomes damaged. One former Scientology member testified, "For over 20 years, I believed the e-meter was an accurate scientific instrument, but later learned it was just a simple electrical resistance meter. At that moment, everything I had believed collapsed, and I couldn't trust anything else." The second problem is complete collapse of self-identity. Within the organization, their identity was the special status granted by the organization. The identity as Scientology's OT or WM-SCOG's God's child was the foundation of all self-concept. When this identity collapses upon leaving the organization, they face the fundamental question, who am I? The third is complete loss of social relationships. Brothers and sisters within the organization, whom they considered closer than family, completely turn their backs the moment they leave. Particularly when relationships with existing family and friends were severed because of the organization, they literally feel left alone in the world. One WM-SCOG ex-member said, "When I left the church, everyone I had known for 20 years turned away from me. I had grown distant from my blood family during that time, and I ended up in a situation with no one. Sitting alone in my apartment, I thought, am I really alive?" The fourth is economic ruin. Many victims had donated their assets to the organization or lost general economic activity abilities by focusing only on organizational work. When leaving the organization in middle age or later, they often face situations where economic independence is nearly impossible. The fifth is social prejudice and misunderstanding. Many people say to victims, "Why did you fall for such an obvious scam?" Or, "You could have known with just a little thought." Such reactions further isolate victims and make them blame themselves. Here, let me add a somewhat cynical perspective. This misunderstanding of victims reveals fundamental problems in our society. We are more accustomed to blaming victims than helping them. The victim-blaming culture of the victim is at fault becomes soil that allows manipulative organizations to run rampant. Recovery of victims requires, above all, understanding without judgment. Rather than questioning why they were deceived, we should listen to what damage they suffered and think together about what is needed for recovery. Recovery is never possible alone, and absolutely requires support and help from trustworthy people. Professional help is also important. Such damage is trauma of a different dimension from ordinary disappointment or frustration. Professional psychological counseling or therapy is often needed. Unfortunately, there are not many specialists who understand and can help with this special form of damage. The most important thing in the recovery process is time. Reconstructing thought patterns and identity formed over decades doesn't happen overnight. Both victims themselves and those around them must acknowledge this and have patience. Chapter 8. Social Response and Prevention. All our responsibility. The problem of manipulative groups doesn't end with individual victims' misfortune. This is a problem that harms the health of our entire society, and therefore is a task that all of society must come forward to solve. Individual efforts have limitations, and comprehensive approaches at institutional and cultural levels are needed. The first social responsibility is improvement of education. Our current education system is effective in knowledge transmission, but insufficient in cultivating critical thinking abilities. Students are skilled at memorizing and reproducing given information, but lack ability to judge information reliability or analyze from various perspectives. Media literacy education is particularly urgent. In modern society, the ability to distinguish reliable information in a flood of information is an essential survival skill. Education is needed to develop abilities to judge what information is trustworthy, who provides this information, and what their intentions are. Change is also needed in religious or ideological education. Rather than emphasizing unconditional faith or obedience, the importance of healthy questioning and verification should be taught. True faith or belief should be able to survive critical examination. The second responsibility is improvement of legal systems. Current laws cannot properly regulate the cunning methods of manipulative organizations. New legal frameworks are needed that can prevent obvious exploitation and manipulation while ensuring religious freedom and individual choice rights. Legal measures to increase financial transparency of religious corporations are particularly urgent. Religious corporations receiving tax benefits must prove corresponding public benefit. An appropriate disclosure and monitoring of financial operations must be conducted. Establishment of specialized agencies like France's MIVILUD-ES mission to monitor and combat cultic deviances, or Germany's cult monitoring system is worth considering. Such agencies can protect citizens while not infringing on religious freedom. The third responsibility is improvement of social awareness. Social prejudice and misunderstanding toward victims of manipulative organizations is a major factor making problem resolution difficult. Reactions like, "Why did you fall for such an obvious thing?" further isolate victims and make potential victims hesitate to seek help. The media's role is also important. Media has the responsibility to continuously report the reality of these dangerous groups and instill awareness in citizens. However, they must simultaneously provide objective and balanced reporting and not promote prejudice against specific religions. The fourth responsibility is building support systems. Professional counseling agencies, legal support agencies, and economic independence support programs are needed to help victims recover. Currently, such support systems are very insufficient. Training specialists who understand and can help with this special form of damage is particularly urgent. General psychological counseling techniques are insufficient. Expertise that deeply understands the characteristics of manipulative organizations and victim psychology is needed. Here, let me add a somewhat cynical perspective. Unfortunately, our society often responds only after problems explode. We are more familiar with post-incident handling than prevention. However, for manipulative organization problems, prevention is much more effective and economical than treatment. Most important is the interest and participation of individual citizens. Civic consciousness is needed to actively help people in danger around us and to continuously pay attention to and voice concerns about such problems. Chapter 9. Healthy Communities and True Spirituality. Wisdom to distinguish the right path. Not all organizations are bad. Humans live as social beings belonging to various communities. Family, workplace, religious communities, civic organizations. Healthy organizations play important roles in individual growth and social development. The important thing is how to distinguish healthy organizations from manipulative ones. The first characteristic of healthy organizations is transparency. The organization's purpose, operational methods, financial situation, decision-making processes are transparently disclosed to members. Organizations with nothing to hide don't hide. You can ask about anything anytime and receive appropriate answers. The second is freedom of choice. Healthy organizations presuppose voluntary participation of members. You can reduce participation or quit anytime, and they respect such choices. They don't condemn or punish people leaving the organization and maintain human relationships. The third is recognition of diversity. Healthy organizations respect members' diverse opinions and perspectives. While there is consensus on core organizational values, various views can coexist on detailed matters. Discussion and debate are encouraged, and minority opinions are heard. The fourth is mutual respect. In healthy organizations, even with hierarchy, mutual respect is basic. Superiors don't treat subordinates carelessly and recognize the personality and rights of all members. Power is a means of service, not a tool of domination. The fifth is pursuit of growth and development. Healthy organizations promote members' personal growth, and the organization itself continuously tries to develop. They learn from mistakes, adapt to changing environments, and strive toward better directions. In contrast, manipulative organizations show characteristics of secretiveness, forced participation, uniformity coercion, authoritarian hierarchy, and obsession with maintaining status quo. We also need to think about true spirituality. Feeling spiritual thirst in modern society is natural. More people are experiencing inner emptiness despite material abundance, which is a basic human need. The first characteristic of true spirituality is humility. True spiritual leaders or groups don't claim they are perfect or the only path to salvation. Rather, they show attitudes of continuous learning and reflection. The second is openness. They accept external criticism and opinions and pursue transparent communication. They also show respectful attitudes toward other traditions and perspectives. The third is unconditional love and service. They work for the happiness and peace of all beings, not for personal gain or power. The fourth is providing practical wisdom. They give concrete teachings that actually help in daily life. They don't confuse with abstract and vague concepts. The fifth is economic integrity. While operational costs or minimal support may be necessary, they don't directly connect spiritual growth with money. Here, let me add a somewhat cynical perspective. Modern society's spirituality marketing has become very sophisticated. There are so many fakes that look real that it's becoming increasingly difficult for ordinary people to distinguish. Even consumers' spiritual needs have become objects of commodification. However, true spirituality is not found in special places. It can be discovered in our daily lives, in relationships with family, in encounters with neighbors. Gratitude and wonder felt in ordinary moments may be more precious than flashy packaging or mystical experiences. Conclusion: the truth shall set you free. The problems of Scientology and WMS-COG that we have examined are not merely stories of two religious organizations. This was a representative case study of manipulation and exploitation mechanisms prevalent in modern society. Authoritarian organizational structures, information manipulation, economic exploitation, social isolation, psychological manipulation exist in various forms throughout our daily lives. Their success, if we can call it success, serves as a mirror reflecting structural problems of modern society. People alienated in a society dominated by individualism and materialism. People seeking certain answers in a rapidly changing world. People longing for genuine community and belonging. The reality that their pure desires are being exploited is the real problem we face. The important thing is not to dismiss these problems as matters of individual foolishness or weakness. This is a systematic and organized problem, and therefore requires systematic and organized responses. Multidimensional efforts are needed: educational improvement, legal system reform, social awareness change, support system construction. At the same time, each of us must change. We must develop critical thinking abilities, maintain sound judgment, and form solidarity to protect and support each other. Most importantly, we need to establish clear standards for what constitutes true value, healthy relationships, and genuine spirituality. Here, let me add a final cynical perspective. Unfortunately, these problems will not easily disappear. As long as human desires and weaknesses exist, attempts to exploit them will continue. But we cannot give up because of this. When more people recognize these problems and strive to create better alternatives, our society can gradually become a healthier and freer place. True freedom is not just escaping external control. Escaping from inner fear, ignorance, and manipulation is more important. When we know the truth and can freely choose based on that truth, we can finally become truly free beings. In John 8:32, Jesus said, "And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." These words are still valid today. Do not be deceived by beautiful words and plausible promises, but pursue truth and enjoy true freedom in truth. True salvation is not given from outside. It is discovered within us and realized through daily practice. Deep bonds with loved ones, warm hearts toward neighbors in difficulty, courageous actions for just causes. These things can truly save and heal us. I earnestly hope you will have true peace and freedom in your lives, and I hope you will play the role of salt and light in this dark age. Closing remarks. I extend my deepest gratitude to all of you who have stayed with us for this long time. I sincerely thank you for your interest and passion in listening to the end, despite dealing with heavy and difficult topics. I hope this audiobook has been of some help in protecting you and your loved ones, and I hope it can contribute to making our society a safer and healthier place. If this content has been helpful to you, please share it with others around you. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel and set notifications so we can continue to deliver useful information to you. I pray that true peace and wisdom will be with you in your lives. Thank you.